This is Marin Hinkle.
Yep.
Oh, shoot. All right. All right, I'm gonna let you go. I'll have to figure it out from here a little bit. Can we talk a little later tonight? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Call me. I'll call you as soon as I'm done. We might finish a little early.
What time will that be about?
About 8:40, I hope.
You'll call me about 8:40 or
Yeah.
between 8:40 and 9.
Yeah.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
You got it. All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Hey, everybody. Good evening. Working on Passover, folks. Working on the Passover Seder.
Good for you. I got to tell you something before we start.
Yes.
This is the highlight of my week. I look forward to it. I enjoy it. And it's one of the things that sustains me through the whole COVID epidemic.
Wow. It's very, very sweet of you. And I feel the same way. I really do. I love seeing everybody here. It's definitely given some structure and some stability.
Yes.
I don't think we missed a Wednesday night this year, have we, Rabbi?
Once. We had one.
But one?
We missed, yeah. And then there's Ryder. He was kind of sleeping by my feet already. Don't be so lazy, dog. Ryder comes to Torah Study. You just never see him. He's down below.
He's a puppy.
He's listening to Torah. Look how tired he is.
Does he speak Hebrew yet, Rabbi?
I think he speaks Hebrew and Aramaic.
Of course.
I'll let you go back to sleep. Sorry, I woke you up. Sleepy dog. Actually, I want you to not sleep because then you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and wake me up. But the problem is I like to work it late at night a lot of times. And if I do that, he wakes up and then it's not good because then he wants to go out and he thinks it's,
Morning.
Yeah, so it's not good. It's really not. It's cramping my style, but whatever. What am I going to do? He's a cute dog. Yesterday I took him up. We walked around the park down in Northridge. We went down to where I grew up as a kid, and I let him run around my old park. I thought it would be a good park for him to run around, and he liked it, but he just wouldn't get back in the car. And that was not fun. I was literally running around for half an hour, 45 minutes trying to get him. He would not get back in the car. And he hasn't done that before where, he just wouldn't get back in the car, not get back. It was weird. I mean, he liked my old neighborhood up in Port Ranch. He liked running around that place.
Are you going to take him to training?
To training camp? No, I'm going to take him to the Dodger Stadium.
Yeah.
So tomorrow I may find out. I'm hopefully going to get some tickets tomorrow. I find out.
Well, you're going to take me then, huh?
I have to take Mike, of course. Mike's going to celebrate with I'm not going to opening day. They're charging like $2,000 for tickets for opening day.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, they only can get 20%, 25%, something like that in. It'll be interesting to see whether they have like everybody seated in the same area or whether they're going to.
No, I heard they're going to
spread around.
Spread it out.
Yeah, I just wonder if they'll spread.
If you watch any of the spring training games, it's going to be like that.
I just wonder if they're going to put. Well, yeah, but spring training stadium is not that big. I wonder if they're going to put people way up in heaven, up the nosebleed section. That section at Dodger Stadium is really, really, really high up.
Oh, it really is.
And I wonder if they're going to charge ridiculous amounts for that section. We'll see. At least they're going to open up. And what they're doing is they're going to have limited seats until the 2nd of June. And then they're hoping that by June they'll have.
Supposedly LA County's going orange tier in a couple weeks.
What does that mean though?
Capacity could grow.
But it wouldn't be 100%. What does it have to be?
No, I think it's, what, is it 20 now?
Yeah. Or 20,
I think it goes up to 30 or 40 or something like that.
So what does it have to be in order to be 100%?
The government has to die.
There you go.
You have to be in You have to be in Texas.
Yeah, there you go. Because you're 100.
Oh, wait a second. You say that, but is the Texas Houston and Dallas stadium, baseball stadiums, are they going to be at full capacity?
Yeah, that's what I read.
Really?
Everything's at full capacity, I think.
Open.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
We have a bad governor.
Yeah, I understand, but this is crazy. I can't. Are you kidding me? So here it is. Minute Maid. Okay, no. Now wait a second, because I was about to lose it. I mean,
That's
I'm
Houston.
angry, but that would really anger me. No, I want to make it clear. As of 10 hours ago, the Houston Astros are going to open up at 50% capacity.
What about the Rangers?
Okay.
I'll look, but Houston is 50%.
Because I read the Rangers are opening up at 100%.
Okay, 50%. I'm going to get to that. Here I'm going to get to it. 50% were given to welcome about 8,200 fans to. That's it. That's all there are. Oh no. Detroit Tigers are giving the green light to have 8,200. I don't think they'd get 8,200 fans at the Detroit Tigers.
Exactly.
People at their wishing.
Well, we used to live there.
They're dreaming. I know, but they haven't won the World Series since you left. I think
It's
84.
true.
I think
They
84
missed
was.
me.
I think they won in 84 was the last year that they won.
Yeah, that's true. That's right.
The Astros' fellow Texan team, here it is. The Texas Rangers created headlines earlier this month by detailing plans to open Globe Field at full capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey.
No restrictions will be placed on the 40,000 seat stadium. The Rangers are set to be the first major league team to host a full capacity crowd.
Okay, are we moving to Florida or Texas?
No, that's Texas.
Y'all come on down.
Anyway, so Houston has 50%. The Texas Rangers have 100%. That's amazing that even in the state of Texas there'd be such a difference. You were right. It's 100% in Dallas.
And they just announced, I think it was yesterday, that the vaccine, there is no restriction that anybody that wants the vaccine in Texas, they have access to the vaccine. It's
That's
not
wonderful news.
over age 16. Over age 16.
Wow. That's amazing. That's really amazing. That's really good news.
There's a few states like that now, Rabbi.
I don't think a state that big. I think the other states were like Alaska, like states that there's nobody there, That's amazing though, that Texas, because Texas is population wise one of the top 5 states now, I think, right? Four or 5 states.
The third, I think.
That's amazing.
Well, yeah, we didn't used to be this big, but everybody that's moved from California.
I know. You guys were gonna say that. Anyways, the point is that you got. It is amazing that but it's interesting though that Dallas and Houston have that difference.
Yeah,
I wonder why Houston doesn't have full capacity, but
Because Dallas has J.R. Ewing.
No, it's probably political, but I'll tell you, the Rangers Houston's not so good anymore either. So Houston has Dusty Baker as a coach now, so you get to deal with mediocrity.
Can I say
Anyways,
something serious
yes, go ahead.
about what's going on?
Yes.
I would like to suggest that if you're going to get COVID tests, check to see if the swabs have been dipped in ethylene oxalate. I think that's the name of it.
What's that for?
It's a disinfectant, but it is very dangerous. And there are ethylene oxide. Look it up. Make sure that your swabs have not been dipped in that before you take a COVID test. That's all. I'm not going to nag anybody about anything.
Interesting.
Yeah, ethylene oxide.
I'll ask.
Don't put it in your nose.
Okay. It's good to know.
There's a lot of things you shouldn't put in your nose.
Something called
So
ethylene
right,
oxide.
Mike, I'm learning.
I think that's a good point though. Anyways, my wife's had tests, like honestly, she's had like 15 tests maybe more, at least.
Tell her to start paying attention.
Now, she didn't have to take any more tests, does she,
They have
Rabbi?
only
She still
written
does, 'cause the-
officials, EO,
Because
EO, and you've got to look it up. If it has EO at the tip, on the box or on the swabs, don't take it.
I didn't, she still has to take it because she has to prove to the nursing homes that she has to show a test in order to go there. So she doesn't really have a choice, even though she's been vaccinated now for over a month. So she still has to show it, but I don't know, maybe they'll change that. By the way, I went to the Jewish Home for the Aging today for the first time in a
Yes.
year. That was the first time. And it was not
Wow.
an easy thing. They let me be there for about 15 minutes. I was there with Francine's mother. Unfortunately, Francine's mom, Rose, is quite ill, and they let me go. And again, it's very critical, and it was a nightmare. They wouldn't let her stay they wouldn't let Francine stay in the room with me at the same time that I was there, which it didn't make any sense. But we couldn't really say anything because last week I couldn't have even gone. So they've not had many visitors yet, even in that place. So I don't know. I don't understand. I had to put in on a garment. I couldn't come. I came too close to her at one point. I mean, literally, we're talking about the last moments she has on this planet. And who are they afraid of? I'm vaccinated. I'm wearing gloves, a mask, a gown, and
It's not reasonable. It's
know.
not
they
reasonable.
they wanted to do it over the phone, and we just said that's just not. Well, actually, that was the hospital. Tarzana Hospital wouldn't let me come in at all. So thankfully they let her back at the home so that she could have some visitors. Anyways, this is still going on, folks. This is like today. This isn't a week ago or a month ago, 2 months, 6 months ago, when we were really, not knowing what was going on. This is going on right now. So yeah, it's kind of weird when you think, in all seriousness, when we talk about, the Rangers being able to have a stadium with 40,000 people, and I can't see somebody who's terminally
Right.
ill in their last moments. There's just no logic to it. It doesn't make any sense.
No.
So I'm hoping that this will end soon.
How's Francine doing, Rabbi?
She's it's hard. It's very hard for her. It's stressful. She's trying to get her family together so they can all be part of saying goodbye, and Passover is going on. And whenever anybody is dealing with this during holiday time, it's hard. And
Very
obviously-
hard. I lost my cousin Annette in New York the day before yesterday. And my
Oh,
cousin-
Joyce.
I'm
Oh,
so sorry,
Joyce. Oh, I'm so
Annette died.
sorry.
my closest first cousin. We were
Yes.
like
Sorry.
sisters.
Oh,
For so many years.
wow.
Oh,
It's very hard.
I'm so
And no-
sorry, Joyce.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
That's the wrong
Not
person,
of
Rabbi.
COVID, not of COVID.
No, I know. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Joyce. And
Thank you.
we'll dedicate our study to her. And
Thank you.
her name again is
Annette Mauer,
Annette Mauer.
and I love her dearly and always will.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Well, we will dedicate our study tonight to Annette, and that she should be, in the highest levels of heaven tonight. And we're going to study Leviticus. We're studying the
that's
second
super nice.
portion.
That's super nice, Rabbi. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're studying the second portion. And we read last week about sacrifices that people would make in our attempt to be close to God. We read about offerings of standard offerings, the burnt offerings, the kind of the standard offerings. We read about offerings that were made for well-being, and we read about offerings for sin, for asking for sin, and today we're going to continue with those offerings and those ways that people would find ways to find forgiveness, to find peace, to offer thanks. And again, people offering the animals and the products that were important to them. Most of it's animals, but as we're reading and we read last week, some of it's actually grain, and specifically some of it is matzah. So we're going to reflect on this because we almost always read this portion. Pretty much we read this portion Shabbat Hagadol. Occasionally we don't. Occasionally the way it rolls out, we might read the next week's portion, but usually it's Tzav. Usually this is the portion that we read. I'm not sure what the how often it happens that we don't read it on, but we're about halfway through the Torah right now, which makes sense because we're about 6 months from high holidays and about 6 months to high holidays. Passover is now halfway through the year, though in the Bible it was the beginning of the year, as we know. But by the time we had Torah portions and when we started dealing with the temple and times like that, we had moved to a schedule where our calendar was following the Babylonian cycle, which was beginning in the fall. And so Passover became kind of a halfway point rather than the starting point. And there's some connections to Tzav, namely, again, this issue of matzah, of unleavened bread. And what's interesting about it is that unleavened bread wasn't used once a year or one holiday a year. In the temple, it was used every day. So to some extent, Passover is
Are we frozen?
Yes, we are. Yes. So Joyce, I'm really sorry to hear about Annette. It's a shock.
I was fortunate that I just talked to her last Thursday. So I've been keeping in touch with her. So I feel no guilt. I feel no that I neglected her. We talked about every other week. And but she was not doing well. She was 92. She had a full-time caretaker who moved in with her because she didn't want to move out into assisted living or a nursing home. So they moved in a full-time woman to live with her and stay with her. And she fell asleep listening to music, humming, and just stopped breathing. So it was very peaceful, very quiet. And she just ran out of steam.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, so sorry. What day was it, Monday or Tuesday?
What day is today? Wednesday?
Wednesday.
It was late Monday night.
Okay.
And the funeral was already yesterday.
Yeah.
They scheduled it immediately. And the rabbi for the funeral was someone that came every week to her apartment building and talked to the residents. So he knew her, he had been seeing her for years. And my cousin Jay and Chava said it was a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. And the rabbi knew her and liked her very much. And that makes a difference if the rabbi is in touch with the person they're talking about.
Right.
And I've talked to all the cousins, and I've talked to Jay 4 times in the last day and a half. And he said the funeral was beautiful and a lot of love, and they took care of him, of family.
Yeah.
I tried to do that without restarting my computer, and it wouldn't work. So,
well, you're back.
It hasn't done that for a while, but I apologize. It's been a couple of weeks, but I don't know. Did it again just now. Tried to restart.
I'm ready to drive down to the temple and see you in person, and we'll sit 12 feet apart if necessary, because it's a big auditorium and there's just 8, 10, 12 of us. We can spread out. I'll come.
All
I'll
right.
come.
Well,
I'll come too.
It's duly noted. We've definitely been working on it. Harvey's on the call right now, was part of our board meeting last week, where we talked about specifically what the limitations would be for services, but when it comes to classes, we might be able to start sooner, because the issue with services is that we can't sing. The requirements are that we're not allowed to sing right now indoors, but when it comes to classes, we might be able to not have that problem. So unless we start singing in class,
I can't carry a tune, so I won't sing.
so we might be okay. We might be okay for classes, Joyce. That is a possible. I think the other issue though is just making sure that our facilities are clean, which is going to be an issue all the time, is making sure our places are sterilized. As I'm bringing up the page again, I will tell you, I was on the phone today with the people from Family Promise, and none of the congregations right now are having people come into the synagogues or churches in order to do Family Promise. So they've had a real problem with that. But fortunately, Family Promise does have a house now in Castaic, and so they're able to have back on. They are able to have the families in the home in Castaic. There's 3 families at that home in Castaic, and so they've been able to maintain services during this time for homeless families, for the kids. So the good news is that there is, but we don't know what Family Promise will look like once it comes in, because none of the synagogues or churches are ready yet for people to use them for facilities. So that's one of the challenges, obviously, now too, for keeping things clean and sanitary. And since all the families have children under 16, none of those kids are going to be vaccinated. So there's that issue. Anyways, so I was literally on the phone with them today over that issue of what we can do for families right now that are homeless. So, and if our economy doesn't get back in shape, we're going to have more homeless families. So we have the Torah portion, which begins on page, the beginning of chapter 6, right? It's the very beginning. We finish with chapter 5. And where we come to now is really not really a normal break, because the ideas are almost, again, the chapter break, I guess, but Torah portion really came to an end because we had read 5 full chapters, which is quite a lot. Today, we're only reading 3 chapters. But it literally could have been most of what we're reading today, actually all of it, could have been part of one chapter. So really, Vayikra and Tzav are kind of two portions, two parshiot that are breaking up eight chapters, but the 8 chapters all cover essentially the general guidelines for sacrifice. So you'll see almost again identical instructions and continuation. After this, we kind of get into other stuff. We do revisit this a little bit in Achrei Mot in not next week, in a couple weeks from now, we'll read Achrei Mot and we'll see some of the sacrifices kind of in detail again, but pretty much this detail is only in the first 2 portions. And so it continues again, just kind of where we left off. And it says, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, command Aaron and his sons thus. This is the ritual of the burnt offering, which we read at the beginning of last week. The burnt offering itself shall remain where it is burned upon the altar all night until morning, while the fire on the altar is kept going on it. The priest shall dress in linen raiment with linen breeches next to his body, and he shall take up the ashes to which the fire has reduced the burnt offering on the altar and place them beside the altar. So again, directions on what to do after the fact. Now you think we've moved on to a new idea, which is like, okay, that what happens after sacrifices, but you'll see, not really. You'll see, because we're going to go back into it. He shall then take off his vestments and put on other vestments and carry the ashes outside the camp to a clean place. The fire on the altar shall be kept burning, not to go out. Every morning, the priest shall feed wood onto it, lay out the burnt offering on it, and turn into smoke the fat parts of the offerings of well-being. So this is what's going on daily basis. Burnt offering, well-being. But we also read about the other offerings, the sin offerings, and we'll get to those too. They're going to come back to that. A perpetual fire shall be kept burning on the altar, not to go out. And this is the ritual of the meal offering. Aaron's sons shall present it before the Lord in front of the altar. A handful of the choice flour and oil of the meal offering shall be taken from it, with all the frankincense that is on the meal offering. And his token portion shall be turned into smoke on the altar as a pleasing odor to the Lord. Again, the meal offering we read before, little details of how to burn it, and again, what to do. Well, you'll see kind of what to do after. What is left of it shall be eaten by Aaron and his sons. It shall be eaten as unleavened cakes in the sacred precinct. They shall eat it in the enclosure of the tent of meeting. So right there, again, as soon as you see the word unleavened cakes, you know that it is the word matzot. It's matzah. So this is matzah that they eat on a daily basis inside the precinct. So what it seems as though that most of what they ate bread-wise in the temple, not every day, every meal, but while they were serving in the temple, the Kohanim ate matzah. So that's what was eaten in the tabernacle and then later on in the temple. It says it shall not be baked with leaven, which again, the Hebrew word chametz. Not use chametz with it. I have given it as their portion from my offerings by fire. It is most holy, like the sin offering and the guilt offering. And here again, we have returning back to the sin offering and guilt offering, the chatat and the asham offering. So, and we are about to get into those a little bit. Only the males among Aaron's descendants may eat of it, as their due for all time throughout the ages, from the Lord's offerings by fire. Anything that touches these shall become holy. So only the Kohanim can eat of it. Nobody else, not the Levites, not Moses, only the Kohanim.
Not the mothers.
That's right. That's right. That's at least of the matzot. That's of the grain, not of all the offerings.
Oh.
But you'll see some of the things are specified. But and some of the things aren't necessarily in the Torah, but they're later on in the Talmud. By the time of the Talmud, some of these laws had to be expanded on, even though, again, Talmud was completed after there no longer was a temple. In the Mishnah, there was a temple, and there were laws that had developed over time over these offerings and who could eat from them, and whether once a Kohen's daughter had been married off, and if she wasn't married to a Kohen, she's not able to eat of those priestly things that the women could eat of. So there are later laws because the Torah didn't cover them specifically, and so they had to come up with answers for those things as well. Anyways, it says, the Lord said to Moses, saying, this is the offering that Aaron and his sons shall offer to the Lord on the occasion of his anointment. 1/10 of an ephah of choice flour as a regular meal offering, half of it in the morning and half of it in the evening. Shall be prepared with oil on a griddle. You shall bring it well soaked and offer it as a meal offering of baked slices of pleasing odor to the Lord. And so the priest anointed from among his sons to succeed him, prepare it. It is the Lord's for all time to be turned entirely into smoke. So too every meal offering of a priest shall be a whole offering. It shall not be eaten. And then the Lord spoke to Moses. And here it says again, Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron and his sons thus, this is the ritual of the sin offering. And so we get back to the chatat, to the sin offering. The sin offering shall be slaughtered before the Lord at the spot where the burnt offering is slaughtered. It is most holy. The priest who offers it as a sin offering shall eat of it. It shall be eaten in the sacred precinct in the enclosure of the tent of meeting. Anything that touches its flesh shall become holy, and if any of its blood is spattered on a garment, you shall wash the bespattered part in the sacred precinct. An earthen vessel in which it is boiled shall be broken. If it was boiled in a copper vessel, it shall be scoured and rinsed with water. Only the males in the priestly line may eat of it. It is most holy. And again, this is for the sin offering.
Mhm.
But no sin offering may be eaten from which any blood is brought into the tent of meeting for expiation in the sanctuary. Any such shall be consumed in the fire. So again, when we're talking about these sin offerings, a little different than the burnt offerings, but again, I'd say one of the similarities is that none of them are able to be eaten outside of the precinct. They're not supposed to be taken outside of the temple, or in this case, the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the movable temple. Now we get to the Asham offering, which again, very similar to the sin offering. This is the ritual of the guilt offering, is most holy. The guilt offering shall be slaughtered at the spot where the burnt offering is slaughtered, and the blood shall be dashed on the sides of the altar. And I think, again, one of the differences here to the sin offering is that on this one, the blood is not spattered on the corners. So this is a little different than the sin offering, the chatat. Its fat shall be offered, the broad tail, the fat that covers the entrails, the two kidneys, and the fat that is on them at the loins, and the protuberance on the liver shall be removed with the kidneys. The priest shall turn them into smoke on the altar as an offering by fire to the Lord. It is a guilt offering. Only the males in the priestly line may eat of it. It shall be eaten in the sacred precinct. So that part's exactly the same. The guilt offering is like the sin offering. The same rule applies to both. It shall belong to the priest who makes expiation thereby. Which, by the way, one of the takeaways from that is that it's not like every priest can eat of it. The priest that's actually offering it for the person, they get to eat of it. So it's not like this one's shared by the other priests. It says it belongs to the priest who makes expiation thereby. Seems to be specifically that Kohen, that one priest who's there. So too the priest who offers a man's burnt offering shall keep the skin of the burnt offering that he offered. That has value to it, because that, of course, can be made into leather, can be made into something of value. Further, any meal offering that is baked in an oven, and any that is prepared in a pan or in a griddle shall belong to the priest who offers it. But every other meal offering with oil mixed in or dry shall go to the sons of Aaron all alike. So again, some offerings are shared amongst the priests, these meal offerings. So there is value to these offerings, to making these offerings. And so the priests became very, very wealthy with these sacrifices. They got a huge income that came from these offerings, these sacrifices. So this ended up becoming a fairly corrupt situation, because the people who are making these offerings, eventually there were a whole lot more people, and the priests now were there were a lot of priests too, but if the exponential growth of the people, even with an exponential growth of priests, it doesn't keep up with how many animals that you had to sacrifice. And so eventually people started offering monetary equivalents of the sacrifices. They didn't offer the sacrifices themselves. And you can see within the Torah itself that option beginning to develop. And so people would send the monetary value. And so priests became very, very wealthy. When anyone ever committed a sin, they were sending essentially the offering value to the priests. And so people took it seriously. I mean, for them, this was their religion. This was the way they worshiped. And again, even though religious services outside of the temple were developing, especially in the diaspora during this time, there were Jews in Egypt and in Rome and in Greece and in all over the Mediterranean that were sending money back to the temple. And it was a huge amount of money that was coming back. If you can imagine that these offerings ended up becoming part of what corrupted the priesthood. So now we come to the shlemim, the offering we call the well-being offering, the offering of shalom, the offering of wholeness, of well-being. This is the ritual of the sacrifice of well-being that one may offer to the Lord. If he offers it for thanksgiving, he shall offer together with the sacrifice of thanksgiving unleavened cakes with oil mixed in, unleavened wafers spread with oil, and cakes of choice flour with oil mixed in, well soaked. This offering with cakes of leavened bread added, he shall offer along with his thanksgiving sacrifice of well-being. And here's one of the examples of lechem chametz, that cakes of leavened bread. So these ones are different than the other cakes, the other things that are offered, which are clearly matzot. In this line here, it says sacrifice of unleavened cakes. Here it says this offering with leavened bread added, he shall offer along with thanksgiving. So it seems again that some of the shlemim offerings are offered for thanksgiving, for offering thanks, not necessarily there for all of them. So well-being may not be just thanks. There might be another element to a shlemim offering. Probably, again, what we're talking about with the shlemim offerings, or why people gave them, we think, was because it was not a sin offering. They're not offering it for forgiveness to make up for something they did wrong. They're not offering it as their kind of like daily ritual offering. It's not one of those. It's an offering for because you wanted to, because you felt good, because you were thankful, or because, again, you're appreciative of something, or again, you've become healthy, you've become restored to health. People would offer sacrifices, and they didn't necessarily fit the times when people would say, well, you have to. These are not, these don't seem to be sacrifices that people had to give. That this was more of an expression of the peace of mind that somebody had when they wanted to offer it. So let's take a look at this, these type of shlemim offerings. Out of this, you shall offer one of each kind as a gift to the Lord. It shall go to the priest who dashes the blood of the offering of well-being, and the flesh of his thanksgiving sacrifice of well-being shall be eaten on the day that it is offered. None of it shall be set aside until morning. If, however, the sacrifice he offers is a votive or free will offering, it shall be eaten on the day he offers his sacrifice, and what is left of it shall be eaten on the morrow. What is then left of the flesh of the sacrifice shall be consumed in fire on the third day. If any of the flesh of his sacrifice of well-being is eaten on the third day, it shall not be acceptable. It shall not count for him who offered it. It is an offensive thing, and the person who eats of it shall bear his guilt. So what are they talking about here? They're talking about, again, when someone offers up a sacrifice, and in this case, we're talking about sacrifices of well-being, that they had to be eaten. They had to be eaten right away in some cases, and in some cases, at least for the Thanksgiving. And then for this one, for a votive or free will offering, it could be eaten on the day he sacrificed it, or even on the next day. But it's not supposed to be eaten on the day after that. So first day, second day, okay. Third day, not okay. But that's specifically for the votive or free will offering, which again seems to be, it seems it's not necessarily an offering of thanks. Those ones have to be eaten right away. So what is a votive offering and a free will offering? So a free will offering definitely seems to be somebody who's offering a sacrifice just because they want to, because they have no special reason to do it. They're just offering up a sacrifice. But a votive offering is, seems to be something in particular, which I'm not sure a votive offering is really captures the meaning of it. Because this offering is not a Thanksgiving offering or free will offering. It's an offering that people would make when, again, according to the root or the meaning, the plain meaning of it, when someone is fulfilling a vow. So when they fulfilled a vow, they've made a promise. They say, if God does this, I'll do this. They make a vow. Then they would offer up a sacrifice as a way of kind of sealing it and saying, I've fulfilled my part of the bargain. And so this is a sacrifice that people seem to have been making.
I wonder if the not eating on the third day would lead to not eating food that is already spoiled that could make them ill.
Could be.
It makes
It
sense.
doesn't say it, but it definitely makes sense. They're kind of saying if you don't eat it by the third day, well, of course they say it's not acceptable, but yeah, it could definitely dissuade people from eating something that could have gone bad.
Right.
So again, offerings were made for other reasons other than sins, other than thanks. There are other reasons why people would have offered a sacrifice. And one of them again is for clearing a promise. And again, the word that's used here is neder, like we use in kol nidre, all of our vows. So this is the root for like I said, votive doesn't really, I don't know what we really mean by it, but I don't know what people think when they hear that word, but votive, it really is more of I don't know if it's a great translation because neder really means of vow fulfilling sacrifice offering. So that's what that is. So you were wondering where I was going with what else could there be besides well-being, or what other things could be a well-being offering besides thanks. And one of them is clearing the slate, if you will. I guess you could say it's all part of what we would call shalom, a sense of shalom, which is the root for this well-being. So it says, flesh that touches anything unclean shall not be eaten. Okay, that makes sense. It shall be consumed in fire. As for other flesh, only he who is clean may eat such flesh. So again, if it comes into something unclean, which also could have to do with people staying healthy and not eating stuff that could possibly have gone bad. What could be unclean? Bugs, rats, all those things that are not kosher, that make animals, that make animal flesh unkosher or other things unkosher. Yeah, if those things become unclean, you can't eat them. They have to be burned. And that happens to the meat. But what happens to a person? The person who is in a state of uncleanness eats flesh from the Lord's sacrifice of well-being. That person shall be cut off from his kin. That's a pretty serious punishment for somebody who's eating or becoming, doing their priestly stuff. Pretty tough punishment. Yeah. When a person touches anything unclean, be it human uncleanness or an unclean animal or any unclean creature, and eats flesh from the Lord's sacrifice of well-being, that person shall be cut off from his kin. So, could be in a state of uncleanness. He'd done it. He hadn't purified himself. They're making it very clear that somebody who, again, is in that, who touches anything unclean, I guess you could say, still in a state of uncleanness. But again, it was a serious issue. So people did not, when they were doing their priestly duties, they wanted to make sure they were purified when they did it, because the punishment is pretty strict. Now we get into some interesting laws that are definitely related to the offerings, but now things kind of change a little bit in this section. It starts to change a little bit with it starts to change a little bit with this portion, with this part of the portion. Let's take a look. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the Israelite people thus, you shall eat no fat of ox or sheep or goat. So this isn't just for the priests. This is all of Israel. You don't eat the fat of an ox, a sheep, or a goat. Fat from animals that died or were torn by beasts, they may be put to any use, but you must not eat of them. So you can use them for leather. You can use them to feed to other animals you might have, if you have a dog or whatever kind of beast you might have that would eat those things, but you can't eat them. You're not supposed to eat them at all. So the fact that you don't eat fat, I mean, you're not supposed to eat them at all. You can use all parts of an animal that are torn or killed. I will say it doesn't flat out say torn by beasts. The translation here of trefa doesn't necessarily mean torn by beasts. It could be torn just by being left. The animal was essentially like roadkill, if you will. If it was run over by a cart or something like that, it's torn. It's something. It doesn't even have to be torn apart. It's just killed. It's an animal that's died, even of natural causes, by the way, is not kosher. You can't eat it. You can't consume it. You can feed it to other animals. You can sell it. You can sell it to somebody who's also going to not use it for food. You're not supposed to sell this knowing that someone else, another Jewish person's eating it for food, but you're supposed to not eat it. But yeah, it says you can use it for anything else. Now, I will tell you that this word trefa is the word trefa is treif.
Mhm.
When we talk about what's unkosher, we say it's treif, right? Oh, don't want that. It's not. We don't actually use the word. We think it's you probably thought it was a Yiddish word, but trefa is a Hebrew word. It means torn, literally.
Mhm.
But it's an animal that died that you didn't kill for the purposes of eating it. That's what makes it treif. Now we use the word all-encompassing for anything that's not kosher, meaning that pig is not kosher. It's treif. We say anything that's not kosher is treif. Literally, it means torn, and literally it applies to animals that could have been kosher that you don't eat because they weren't slaughtered properly. So that's an interesting thing. That's actually what the word trefa means. It means torn. So it's become associated with all things not kosher, kosher and treif. Technically speaking, doesn't make sense for something, for example, that is treif by means of, let's say, milk and meat mixed together. You'd go, well, that's treif now, but it's not really torn. But again, it's something like pig would never be able to be eaten, even if it was killed in a kosher way. So it doesn't really make sense to call it torn because it's just not kosher. It's not a kosher meat animal. So anyways, that's where the word comes from. And that's what makes it, that's what essentially, again, is the first like boundary of kashrut, if you will. What makes it not kosher, besides not being an animal that you can eat, not being killed in the right way. So if anyone eats the fast of the animals from which offerings by fire may be made to the Lord, the person who eats it shall be cut off from his kin. It's not the animals from every offering, but not every non-kosher or treif animal. You're not cut off, but you're cut off, it says specifically here, if those are offerings to be made to the Lord. So again, there are other places where the strictness of kashrut is laid out like this, But here it is. So far, it's only been about the offerings. We haven't read anything about kashrut, by the way, in the Torah yet. It's in next week's portion, which we're not actually reading next week. We're reading it in a couple of weeks because we have Passover next week, Passover portion. But when we get to Shmini in next week's portion, we actually get to kashrut. But before we get to the animals that we can't eat, we get to not to eat fat and not to eat from animals essentially that are torn. So, and we all, as we discussed already, we did read, you're not supposed to boil a kid in its mother's milk. We did read that already. So those kashrut laws are there even before we get the list of animals that we're not supposed to eat. So interestingly, those come down before we get the laws, which we're going to literally get 2 chapters from now, 3 chapters from now, but it comes before we get the list of animals. And here, talking about fat, you also must not consume any blood, either of a bird or of any animal in any of your settlements. Anyone who eats blood shall be cut off from his kin. And again, it was not uncommon for people to have meals with animal blood, either on them, with it, on the side, as a dip, as a condiment. All that kind of stuff was not, we didn't think it was cool. And we understood that blood is life. It's a symbol. It's the living, it's not a symbol. It's the living embodiment of what animals and people need to live. And to have it by itself is almost, again, a testament to, celebrating bloodshed rather than recognizing that, an animal had a life at one point, but we're trying to not make a joke out of it and not to take it lightly. So the law is pretty strict about not eating blood. And here it doesn't even say with regards to the offerings. Back here, it was talking about offerings with the fat. Here it's just blood, period. And then it says, and the Lord spoke to Moses saying, speak to the Israelite people thus, the offering to the Lord from a sacrifice of well-being must be presented by him who offers his sacrifice of well-being to the Lord. So it says here, the person presenting it offers it. His own hands shall present the Lord's offering by fire. He shall present the fat with the breast to be elevated as an elevation offering before the Lord. The priest shall turn the fat into smoke on the altar, and the breast shall go to Aaron and his sons, which again is the better part of the animal. The weaker part, the less dietary, nutritional part of the meal, the less desirable part of the meal is offered on the altar. It's the good part, the good meat that goes to the priests. The right thigh from your sacrifices of well-being, you shall present it to the priest as a gift. He from among Aaron's sons who offers the blood and the fat offering of well-being shall get the right thigh as his portion. For I have taken the breast of elevation of offering and the thigh of gift offering from the Israelites, from their sacrifices of well-being, and given them to Aaron the priest and to his sons as their due from the Israelites for all time. So that's kind of, if you will, that's an interesting, well, we're almost done with this chapter, but I will tell you, that ending part right there, or that end of that idea, is a pretty important one, which the priests essentially get the better part of the animal as their part. Now, these last few verses, these kind of describe the special place that Aaron and his sons have. Those shall be the prerequisites of Aaron and the perquest. Let me just see why is it translated as this? It must be prerequisites. No, maybe not. Yeah. Let me just see what the other translation is of this is in Yeah. I'm trying to find what the other translation is. It's not, I almost said prerequisites. It's not what it says. It's the perquisites. Perquisites. Let me just see what the other translation we have for this is. Because yes, it's not prerequisites. Hold it one second. It is.
Sounds like they're saying benefits.
Oh, they are. That's what they
Yeah.
are. But I'm just finding a better translation for this. Allotted.
A lot.
Allotted is the translation that, yes, it's the perquisites, which is another way of saying the perks. That's where the word perk comes from, by the way. So now let's read these last 4 verses. These shall be the perquisites of Aaron and the perquisites of his sons from the Lord's offering by fire. Once they've been inducted to serve the Lord as priests, these the Lord commanded to be given to them once they've been anointed as a due from the Israelites for all time through the ages. Such are the rituals of the burnt offering and the meal offering, the sin offering, the guilt offering, the offering of ordination, and the sacrifice of well-being, with which the Lord charged Moses at Mount Sinai when he commanded that the Israelites present their offerings to the Lord in the wilderness of Sinai. So up until this point, this is kind of the point that I was making at the beginning, which is that up until chapter 8, this is almost like if I was ordering this not as Torah portions, which again, the Torah portions can't be 8 chapters. You can't do, 7 chapters. You can't do a 7-chapter portion. So the break we had from last week to this week, was somewhat based on length, because thematically, this is the end of the idea. This end verse we just had is a great place to break, and there's a new chapter. But this would really be like that idea of these are the sacrifice we just read was a recapitulation of what we just read in the last 7 chapters. Such are the rituals: the burnt offering, meal offering, sin offering, guilt offering, offering of ordination, sacrifice of well-being. This is what the last 7 chapters just gave us.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of like this is now we've just concluded that section. And now we're going to get into another idea. And this last chapter, and so we're actually moving very fast because chapter 8 is the end of this chapter is the end of the Torah portion. So the sections that we read now, which are, a little different. It's a little different idea that we read in chapter 8. This is really gets into the ordination. And even though it says here, the offering of ordination we covered, we really haven't covered it. We're going to get into it now. The offering of ordination, what happens on essentially the day that they make the high priest, that's a special thing, which happens once in a lifetime, if you will. It happens to the high priest when he becomes the high priest. So this doesn't happen a lot. The offering of ordination is, again, it's a very specific and very unique type of thing, which is not offered once a year, even again, once in a generation for the ordination of the high priest. That's what we're about to get into now. What also, of course, is interesting here is that what we're reading, and it's very clear now here, Moses is charged with these directions. Moses gets these directions. It says it, I don't know, I think we read it 3 times here already, or 4 times. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, you read it. I mean, from literally the beginning of the portion, it begins, I mean, and it was in last week's portion too, but literally the first words of this portion are, the Lord spoke to Moses saying. Now,
Is there anything that we do now in this generation that mimics or serves for the burnt offerings, the guilt offerings, the offerings of whatever?
well, Passover, we definitely have the matzah, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Right.
It's actually in this last chapter as well. There's definitely a reminder of what matzot were beyond just the bread of affliction. There's a holiness and purity aspect to it as well. So that's one of the things that people often reflect on, because we always read this portion, or usually read this portion
Right.
within days of Passover. But I would say one of the interesting things about this is that when we get into Yom Kippur, our other major festival,
Right.
we read these, we read not this section, but the portion of purification after we screwed up this stuff, because we screwed it up immediately, and we're left with this, oh, I mean, we really screwed up. We screwed up immediately. It's like if you moved into a new house and there's a flood in the house the day you moved in, which by the way did happen in my house not long after we moved in. One of the toilets downstairs clogged, or bathtub or something in the bathroom overflowed, and we had like water damage in our house like the first month that we moved in. And this is our first home. This is in this house. And I thought to myself, wonderful, what a great start, and we've been in this house now for 23 years this year. So obviously it worked out, but you felt, oh, great. I have a fresh new house, literally a fresh new house. It was brand new and it's already gone wrong. Well, on a much bigger level, we do all these ordination offerings. That's what we're about to read, and what we'll read in next week's portion too. We do this wonderful ordination, fresh new grand opening, and then it all gets messed up immediately, like literally immediately. So that is what we read at Yom Kippur. So it does reflect back on that too, on our other really big day of thinking about how do we get forgiveness. Now, what's so crazy about this, folks, is that this idea that Moses, again, we read other parts of the Torah out throughout Exodus and other parts of especially up till this point, we've read Moses and Aaron. God spoke to Moses and Aaron saying, we have that phrase. We don't have that phrase here. We have God spoke to Moses saying, which is really strange, because there's something powerful about this, which people have pointed out before. Moses doesn't get to take part in any of this. This is for Aaron and his family. Now, one can make the argument by putting it in Moses's mouth. It's basically saying, well, Aaron didn't make this up. Moses told him what to do from God. So that's part of it. You can make the argument that if a priest wrote this, they didn't want to have God telling his ancestor, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You have God telling Moses, and Moses is the lawgiver, and Moses did it, and it's not God. It's not Aaron. Aaron didn't make it up. So what's really powerful about this is that Moses is essentially telling Aaron, this is what you and your family get to do, and I don't get to do it. Me and my family, we don't get to do it. And so what's so strange about Leviticus, and specifically this Torah portion and last week, every time you hear the word Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, every time it says God spoke to Moses saying, every time God said that, or every time we hear that, it's almost as if Moses is getting jabbed in the belly going, and by the way, this is not for you. You're the leader now, and you're the greatest leader, and you're a special leader, and everything else. You talk to God in a different way, but guess what? Your brother, he gets to do this. Your brother gets to do it, and more importantly, his kids get to do it.
Mhm.
We don't know what happens to your kids, Moses. Your kids, they're not part of this. And again, very rarely does the son of a prophet become a prophet. Doesn't happen a lot. Son of a priest becomes a priest. Birth. That's it. You got born and now you get to be a priest. This guy, Moses, doesn't get this. Doesn't get, probably one could make the argument, the most important thing, which is that his family has that continuity.
Mhm.
Because we still know who are the Kohanim. When we talk about why is this, or how is this still relevant? How is this still something that we know about? Because we still know who the priests are. We have no idea who Moses' family is. But we do know who Aaron's family is. So every time you hear in this portion, God told Moses saying, and take Aaron now, along with his sons, and the vestments, and the anointing oil, and the bowl of the sin offering, 2 rams, and the basket of unleavened bread, and assemble the whole community at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Think about what that meant when God told Moses that. Don't take your kids, take your brother's kids, take your nephews and your brother, and we're going to put into motion something that's going to last for the next 1,000 years. Because the priests work, with the exception of this, 50, 60 years, 70 years that the temple was laid waste to, and we assume that there was no sacrifice going on there by Kohanim. I mean, there could have been priests offering up sacrifices in Samaritan lands or whatever, but let's just say that for most of the next 1,200 years, there are priests that are offering up sacrifices who are Aaron's family. And this is a continuity that lasts for 1,200 years until 2,000 years ago. So they were doing these offerings, following these instructions. And this is the ordination. This is the way it all starts, with this offering. So again, a bowl, sin offering, 2 rams, and a basket of unleavened bread. Moses did as the Lord commanded him. And when the community was assembled at the entrance of the tent of meeting, Moses said to the community, "This is what the Lord commanded to be done." Then Moses brought Aaron and his sons forward and washed them with water. So again, this is the ordination. This is
Mhm.
the dedication of them. He put the tunic on him, girded him with the sash. Moses did this. Moses's job here is to turn over some of his authority, or at least the religious authority, to the priest right now, to his brother. Put the tunic on him, girded him with the sash, clothed him with the robe, put the ephod on him, girding him with the decorated band with which he tied it to him. He put the breastpiece on him and put into the breastpiece the Urim and Tumim, right? These objects of divination or understanding God's will, the oracle pieces. And he set the headdress on his head. And on the headdress in front, he put the gold frontlet, the holy diadem, the crown. It said Kadosh on it, and it said holy, as the Lord had commanded Moses. Moses took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and all that was in it, thus consecrating them. So Moses is the one who actually puts the oil on it in the first place. He puts the oil on the tabernacle and on all the special items, the menorah, the altar, the oil.
But
Is the
if
anointing
Lord
oil.
said to Aaron, "Do it to yourself," nobody would have believed him. It would have been grandiose. What are you doing for yourself?
Yep. But Moses is doing this for his brother. Moses doesn't get to have this done. He doesn't get this.
Right.
Brother does. Moses took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and all that was in it with him, consecrating them. He sprinkled some of it on the altar 7 times, anointing the altar and all its utensils, and the laver, the washstand, with its stand to consecrate them. He poured some of the anointing oil upon Aaron's head and anointed him to consecrate him, to make him holy. And so he anointed his own brother, which he knew was going to happen. He's anointed everything else. He's dressed his brother. He's anointed everything there. And then he comes back to his brother and pours the oil on Aaron's head. So imagine that for a second. Moses, the younger brother, anointing the older brother with oil and making him high priest by God's command. This might have been the hardest moment for Moses. Moses then brought Aaron's sons forward, clothed them in tunics, girded them with sashes, and wound turbans upon them as the Lord had commanded Moses. So now he also does this to his nephews, not to his own sons, to his nephews. That's a pretty powerful moment.
Mhm.
And it takes a very special leader, a very special person to be able to not make their own family, their own children, the ones that get chosen, but that have to now turn it over. And again, it's to his family. I mean, his extended family. They're his nephews, but they're not his own sons. And I can only imagine what his sons, what Moses' sons felt as this was happening. What do you mean? There's nothing for us. There's no initiation for us. Your kids don't get special privileges. Aaron's sons, the guy who built the golden calf, your brother, he's not the one who he's not the one who God spoke to at the burning bush. Dad, it's you that should be getting this honor, and we should be getting the honor. It must have been a powerful moment. Trying to imagine that moment. He led forward the bowl of sin offering. Aaron and his sons laid their hands upon the head of the bowl of sin offering, and it was slaughtered. Moses took the blood and with his finger put some of each of the horns of the altar, which we read about the instructions before. So he's fulfilling the instructions, cleansing the altar. Then he poured out the blood at the base of the altar. Thus he consecrated it in order to make expiation upon it. Moses then took all the fat that was about the entrails and the protuberance of the liver and the 2 kidneys and their fat and turned them into smoke on the altar. The rest of the bowl, its hide, its flesh, and its dung, he put to the fire outside the camp as the Lord had commanded Moses. Then he brought forward the ram of burnt offering. Aaron and his sons laid their hands upon the ram's head, and it was slaughtered. Moses dashed the blood against all sides of the altar. Ram was cut up into sections, and Moses turned the head, the sections, and the suet into smoke on the altar, which is interesting because Aaron and his family didn't do this yet. Moses did it, which is weird because, again, this is a one-time deal. Moses is not going to be functioning as a priest outside of this moment right here. But the priests can't do it yet. The priests can't do it because they haven't been dedicated yet. This is all part of their dedication. This is all part of their ordination. So they're in a weird status where they can't do it for themselves. Only Moses can do it. They can do it once there's a high priest, then the priest can do it, right? Then the next person can do it for the next person. But Moses has to do it now. Only Moses can do this. Nobody else can do it. There's no priest who can do it. This is a once in a lifetime moment, once in an ever time moment. This, by the way, gets to this kind of weird paradox, which is, how do you have a priest when we haven't had a functioning priesthood for 2,000 years? How can you ever ordain and purify a new generation of priests? How can you possibly have somebody who can do this for the next high priest? There's no Moses to do it. There's nobody who's at that level who can initiate a new priesthood. So this is one of the reasons why people say we can never have another priesthood, because we don't have anyone who can do this. We don't have anybody who can consecrate a priest. There's no person in the world who can do this, which is ordain and purify a priest to start it. How do you start it? How do you get the thing in motion? You can't. There's nobody who can do it. So this is where the priesthood is kind of in a stuck position. Even if we could rededicate the temple, even if we could, well, I shouldn't say rededicate the temple, even if we had access to the Temple Mount, even if we could build a third temple, who would function as the priesthood? Who could get the priesthood going? We don't have it. So one of the things that we would need is this red heifer, this pure red heifer that we read about in the book of Numbers that needs to be slaughtered and could be the secret formula that could dedicate somebody or purify somebody in order for them to be a priest. That's what people are searching for. The pure red bull, that pure red cow that can be sacrificed, burnt, turned into ashes, and then poured on the priest, the first priest, and all the priestly utensils to make up for this, not having a Moses to do it. So we don't have that, but people are trying to make it. They're also doing something which is even harder. I don't know if it's harder, but it's more bizarre in a way. They've created a way to have a generation of young people who've never come in contact with the ground, who are descendants of Kohanim, who never walk on the earth, and so never come into contact with a dead body, even accidentally. Not a bone, not a fragment anywhere outside of their homes. And these people who are doing this, they're allowed to walk around their house. They don't have to walk around outside. Only outside do they have to do this, but they literally have to walk on, they can't touch the earth. They have to walk on like pallets when they're going outside. And I don't know how old these people are now, because this has been going on for a while. So that maybe they're in their 30s. But there are people in Jerusalem that are actually trying to do this, trying to keep a group of kids that could be eligible for priesthood, who could have the red heifer ashes put on them and then be priests, because they haven't come into contact with the dead, and they would be ready to be priests. So it's very hard to ordain a new priesthood, is my point. But there are people who are trying to figure out how to do it. Other people saying you can't do it. It's not doable. But they have Moses. So the burnt offering, this first ram that's being offered up as a burnt offering for the ordination, Aaron and his sons laid their hands upon the ram's head. It was slaughtered. Moses dashed the blood against the sides of the altar. The ram was cut up into section, and Moses turned the head, the sections, and the suet into smoke on the altar. Moses washed the entrails and the legs with water, turned all of the ram into smoke. That was the burnt offering for a pleasing odor, an offering by fire to the Lord, as the Lord commanded Moses. And again, according to this ram is all burned up. Then he brings forward a second ram, the ram of ordination. Aaron and his sons lay their hands upon this ram's head as well, and it was slaughtered. So again, two rams. This one's all burnt up. Here we get what happens though with this one after it's slaughtered. Moses took some of the blood and put it on the ridge of Aaron's right ear. and the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. It's a very weird scene. But then he does the same thing. Moses then brought forward the sons of Aaron and put some of the blood on the ridges of their right ears and on the thumb of their right hands and on the big toes of their right feet. And the rest of the blood Moses dashed against every side of the altar. So this one, not all the blood goes out on the ground, because on this one, it says Moses dashed the blood against the sides of the altar. This one, also, they put their hands on it, right? Laid their hands on it. That's part of the ritual. But when they get the blood, when they draw the blood out, he puts it on their right ear, right thumb, and the right big toe. So what's going on here with this ritual? What's going on with this ritual of blood on their bodies? What do you think's going on here? And again, it's not just Aaron, it's also his sons. So what do you think about this little blood on the sides?
He's consecrating them to the Lord.
Yep. And so why on their extremities? What do you think? Well, you know, the rabbis understood that each of these pieces of their body are all necessary for being a good priest, right? That you needed to listen to the people, right? You needed to be able to be there to hold people and to bring them close, and that you have to be able to meet them, walk to meet them, and to walk in a right path. That all of these things have to be, you could say, their tongues and their eyes and stuff like that, but probably, again, not very hygienic to put it in someone's eyes and someone's mouth. You're not supposed to drink blood, as we already read, so you can't really do that. But I mean, even if you put it on the outside. But there is this feeling, though, that the extremities, that putting it on the extremities, right? If you're touching the ears, the hand and the feet, that at the tips of each person, you're saying from one end of them to the other, right? From the tip of their, what do you say? From the tip of their head to their toes, right? From their head to their toes. We still say that today.
Mm-hmm.
So you could say, well, you didn't put it on his head, on the top of his head. Well, yeah, you can make that argument, though, that you wouldn't really see it if it was in their head. And plus, they have the turban on top of their head. But putting it on their ear is an extremity on their head. So it's something you'd actually be able to see too. If you put the blood on their ear, you'd actually be able to see it. And on their toe, again, it's one end of the body to the other. The whole priest needed to be pure. The whole priest needed to be right. The whole priest had to be, be good, if you will. Couldn't.
And it encompasses the entire aura. It would radiate out over their entire aura.
Yep. So if you think about what happens here with this interesting ritual of ordination, that their bodies are purified, and it's not just the objects that are purified, not just the altar or the utensils, but that the people themselves are purified as well. Understanding that they're part of it. They're the necessary, maybe the most important part of it is the people, or the priests. So they go through this ritual of ordination, which, like the horns of the altar, like the different pieces of the sanctuary, if you will, the Mishkan, they're also purified with blood. The blood actually purifies them. But again, with the animal itself, with the meat, if you will, with the basar, it says, he took the fat the broad tail, all the fat of the entrails, the protuberance of the liver, the 2 kidneys and their fat, and the right thigh. From the basket of unleavened bread that was before the Lord, he took 1 cake of unleavened bread and 1 cake of oil bread and 1 wafer and placed them on the fat parts and on the right thigh. He placed all these on the palms of Aaron and on the palms of his sons and elevated them as an elevation offering to the Lord. So not only do they touch the animal before it's killed or killed and then sectioned, but they also, the sections themselves, they touch before it's placed on the altar. So again, that's not what happens here with the first ram. The first ram, it says that Moses washed it, and again, by extension, that's what the priests will do the next time they ordain a new high priest. So these priests are after they're on their palms, he takes them, turns them into smoke on the altar with the burnt offering. This was an ordination offering for pleasing odor. For pleasing odor, it was an offering by fire to the Lord. So again, this is the way this first priesthood is made pure, is made ready. Moses took the breast and elevated it as an elevation offering before the Lord. It was Moses's portion of the ram of ordination, as the Lord had commanded Moses. And Moses took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood that was on the altar and sprinkled it upon Aaron and upon his vestments and also upon his sons and upon their vestments. Thus he consecrated Aaron and his vestments and also his sons and their vestments. Moses said to Aaron and his sons, boil the flesh at the entrance of the tent of meeting and eat it with the bread that is in the basket of ordination, as I commanded. Aaron and his sons shall eat it, and what is left over of the flesh and the bread you shall consume in fire. You shall not go outside the entrance of the tent of meeting for 7 days until the period that your ordination is completed, for your ordination will require 7 days. So here we read that part of the ordination is this waiting period before they can go back out to the rest of their family, to the rest of the people, to their wives. This is pretty wild that this last piece includes not only the fact that they have this ritual of blood, which doesn't seem that different from what the altar and all the objects, the inanimate objects, go through a ritual we read of purification. So, in Exodus, we read about how all these great things are created. Then in Leviticus, the first 7 chapters, or really the first couple chapters, we read about how, 7 chapters, we read about how those things are consecrated and how those things are made holy. Now we read about how the priests are made holy. Mm-hmm. But the thing that happens to some extent is that now there's a waiting period of 7 days. So after all of that cleansing, then there's a waiting period, 7 days. So that means they didn't see anybody for 7 days after their ordination. Everything done today, the Lord has commanded to be done 7 days to make expiation for you. You shall remain at the entrance of the tent of meeting day and night for 7 days, keeping the Lord's charge, that you may not die, for so I have been commanded. And Aaron and his sons did all the things that the Lord had commanded through Moses. That's the end of the portion.
Wow.
Now, I will tell you that the next chapter and the next portion, and again, we're not reading next week, we're reading it the week after. Shmini says literally on the 8th day, Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. So the Shmini portion literally means the Shmona, the 8th day. This is what happened the next day. So the 7-day waiting period is over. And now the 8th day, they've come back around. And that's where we read about how they screwed up. because literally they have their dedication. They wait 7 days. They've been cut off from their family. And now the first day of business, if you will. So first they have a soft opening, as they do in a lot of businesses. They have a soft opening, which is obviously a pretty important opening, which is the ordination. In all seriousness, I mean, it's not a soft opening. This is not just for VIPs. I mean, Moses is the VIP. He's the one who's opening this. But in reality, it's a really holy and special moment, because it can't even be opened until not only they have that opening, but then they wait 7 days in order to make sure everything settles, everything's holy, everything is pure, and then it can be opened. And what's so crazy is it goes wrong on that day. So even though it's the 8th day, everybody knows it's Shmini. That's the name of the portion, that it's the 8th day. The answer of like, why is this so mind-blowing isn't just that it's the 8th day. It's technically speaking, the 2nd day of business. It's the next day that anybody could come in and do anything. It's the next time that anyone was seen inside the temple, that in the Mishkan. It's the only time that anyone had seen him over the last 7 days. Their own family hadn't seen him for the last 7 days. And now they come out, we're ready to open. We're open, we're ready. And it goes south immediately. That's what's so crazy about this portion, Shmini, and what's so crazy about what we just read, because we read this great tradition of how to make everything ready and everything right, and it doesn't go that way. And I think what's so amazing about it is that you can make the argument that this is the pinnacle of, I mean, this is the opening of the Mishkan. This is literally the opening of the holiest place that Jewish people the Israelites could ever come to and will come to for the next few hundred years until the temple is built. The Mishkan is in operation for 200 years. And then may have been inside the temple itself, may have been there later after we build a permanent temple in Jerusalem. But literally, everything that we just did, it needs to be redone, because we read about it in the portion Achrei Mot, read about how God tells them to rededicate it all. But when you consider, I mean, all those explanations of what we were supposed to do, that all just didn't work out. I mean, again, the laws are there for the future too. I mean, this wasn't a one-time deal. Every time a new high priest was made a high priest, they did the same thing. They did an ordination ritual, and they followed this as close to the letter of the law that they could do, again, until the temple is destroyed by the Romans. I mean, literally, with that exception of that period that the temple was destroyed for 70 years by the Babylonians. For most of 1200 years, let's say every 30 years or 40 years, the high priest would be coronated, would be ordained, and they do this ritual. So it was done. I mean, arguably it was done. It could have been done. It could have been done 50 times. I can't remember how.
Listen here. What do we need to take away from this?
I will tell you. You probably can guess what I'm going to tell you. You can put the best system in place. You can follow God's directions to the letter, but you better be prepared for things not to go your way. And you better be prepared for, okay, what's plan B? Because otherwise they're sitting there going, we just built this beautiful tabernacle that we spent all this time and energy and all of our beautiful materials and metals and jewels that we all put this in there, and now they're all looking at each other like, what do we do now? Because it just got wrecked, just got impure. It just got completely, everything we thought we were good at is gone. And this is a huge moment where people had to, I don't say shift gears, but they had to come up with a plan B. They had to be able to understand that even following God's direction, even doing something as important as building the tabernacle, we better figure out how to fix this in case something goes wrong, because it goes wrong in a big way, which we'll see in Shmini. You'll see it. You'll see that story again, and you'll recognize what just happened, especially after you read it and you read, all of the directions in Exodus on how to build it. And you just read the last 7 chapters of how to, all these animals and all these purification rituals and all this special energy that's put into doing it. And now what do you do? And that's life, folks. I mean, that is the takeaway from that, is that happens in life all the time. And again, I mean, the story I told you about my house, having a little flood, that is nothing compared to this. But the reality is that it happens to people all the time. I mean, people, you hear stories of how people, I mean, you wonder, how do people figure out how to, I mean, you hear stories about people losing their spouse on a honeymoon. How do you function when you've just spent the last several months preparing for a wedding and thinking you're starting a life off, and it all goes south? I mean, it happens to people. It happens all the time. I mean, unfortunately, it's happening right now on a major level. I mean, I will tell you, there's people like my daughter who's graduated from college during COVID and is now trying to start a career during this time. She's worked her whole life. She wanted to be a teacher since she was a little kid, and she's going to be a teacher, but it's very hard when you don't know what's going to happen, because you prepare and you do everything you're supposed to do, and then people change the rules on you. You have to be able to adapt and be ready for a plan B. You have to be ready for, okay, we just built this whole thing. Now what do we do with it? Because I don't want to see this all go to waste. I don't want to see all this work that I just put in. Now you're telling me I can't use it. And of course, God tells him, no, there's a way to fix it. You don't have to throw it out. You can't throw it out. This can be fixed. And so the lesson and the totality of it, by the time we get to Achrei Mot, and it's the lesson from Yom Kippur, is that you can fix it. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of work to get forgiveness, and it's going to take a lot of work to undo damage, but you can do it. You don't give up, and you don't say, well, that's gone, let's walk away, because that's what they would have had to do. Oh, we built this great Mishkan, we built this altar, we did all this stuff, and now the 2 kids, these 2 two of our priests just blew up in the altar. What do we do now? You were sitting there putting blood on them and purifying them and getting them all ready, and now they just exploded. What do we do now? I'm not ruining the story for you. That's what Shmini. I mean, that's the Torah portion. So you got to be prepared for it. And again, it happens. It happens even on the holiest day. Or the day after the holiest day. It happens even when you're following God's word and doing something special, doing something holy. We can't only expect for the results to be perfect, because they're not. They're not perfect in God's own holy place, in this very special place. Wasn't invulnerable, and wasn't in a place where these things would automatically be prevented. And that's the takeaway from this. By the time you read this in the totality, you'll see that best laid plans, but it's not just best laid plans. It's literally even God's plans have to be ready to adapt. And you have to push through. You have to literally be ready for how do we fix this? And I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to look at this situation and say, there's not a way out of this, that I'm just going to walk away. Say, whatever, start, you can't do it. So, I mean, to me, that's we've only, again, I'm not ruining it, because we've gotten 2/3 through this story, which is you build it, you now get everybody ready for it. It's actually halfway through the story, because then they screw up and then it's fixing it. So it's really 4 stages, and we just finished the first 2 stages. The building of it, the getting the people ready for it, which we just read. It was all of this is commandments, and then the only line is, and Aaron and his sons did all the things the Lord had commanded through Moses. They did it. They did it. That's all it says. There's one line. Up until here, it's all direction. And then the one line is, they did it all. That's it. They did it all. Which is kind of weird that it didn't replay that they did it all. It just says they did it all. One line. And then again, we get to Shmini, and then right here, chapter 10 is Nadav and Avihu. So yeah, so we're that's the 3rd section, but that's a really short section, by the way. That's the section of them screwing up. We don't really know what happens in that section, by the way. It's 3 lines, so we don't really know what happens in that section. But then the fixing of it is in Achrei Mot. So the next 2 portions after Shmini actually don't go into the fixing of it. It actually goes into Zri and Matzorah, the Torah portions about the skin diseases and the fixing of those illnesses. And then it comes back to Achrei Mot, which is chapter 16. So the story, if you will, really goes all the way to
Chapter 16 is
16.
my Torah portion.
Yep. So until we get to this portion right here, went too far. We went a little too far. Until we get to this part right here, where it says the Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the 2 sons. Then we have this. Then this is the 4th part, which is the how do you clean it up? How do you fix it? I mean, I guess you could say the first part, you could say it's 3, you could say it's 3 parts. It's the first part is how do you build it, which is Exodus, with the beginning of Leviticus is then purifying. It's the setup, if you will. Then we have the blow up, and then we have the cleanup. So it could be read as 3. I said 4 because I have like the building of the Mishkan, which technically you could say is really part of the setup, which is going into the first 7 chapters of Leviticus. So if you say the setup, the blow up, and the cleanup, that's 3 sections. But I
And the
kind of said
lesson
4.
on that is, if you really blow up badly, you can still fix it.
Yeah. You can still fix it. Right now, I'm still in the mode of reminding people, don't think that it can't happen. Don't think that. Yeah, and that, as I said, that's a real important point that Joyce makes, which is there is hope, right? There is a way to clean it.
Yes.
There is a way to clean up. And that's the message of Yom Kippur. The other issue, though, that I'm really in right now, which I really want to remind people, is that, there's nothing, we get no guarantees in life that we get to walk away without getting some stuff happen to us. And that's the lesson that's where we're at right now, because we haven't really gotten to the cleanup part, and we know it's there. And I've already, it's there, and we've already told you that it's there. It's in chapter 16, and it's every year at Yom Kippur. But I do want to point out that right now I'm still in the moment. And again, it's because I'm in that moment right now with most of us. If you have any heart or any sense of what's going on right now, this is not the way things are supposed to be. I don't care where you are politically right now. I'm not making a political statement. What we're living with right now is not the way things should be. They're not supposed to be this way. This is not. Obviously, I told you, I wrote about it. It was in the Signal. I told you about it last week, and it was up in the Signal. I posted it up. This is not the way things are supposed to be, and nobody should ever say this is good. And that's where I'm at right now. Right now at Passover this year, I'm saying got to get through this. We got to keep our eyes focused on getting out of it and being positive. But this is not the way things should be. And I don't understand why they're still like that. And I'm not saying I have the answer, but I will tell you, let's just say that. And that's where we're at right now in the Torah portion too. In the Torah cycle right now, we're at, well, actually, right. We haven't even got to we haven't gotten to the blow up yet. We're in the blow up right now, folks. We're maybe getting to the cleanup soon, but maybe we're not even there yet. We're in the blow up part still in the world. And that was my point, was that things are still off kilter and they're still not right. And, you know, again, not making any political statements. It's not the way things should be, not the way it's supposed to be. You and I we didn't sign up for this. We have to deal with it. We have no choice. That's also a fact. And now we'll get through. So maybe we're not even there yet. When we reach Shmini, we'll talk about that. We'll reflect on that. Interesting, when we get to Tazria and Matzorah, we read about skin disease and quarantining, which is we've talked about before. Torah definitely has some interesting things to say about that, and to try to keep people safe and secure. I'm sure people are going to be talking about that again this year. It's the second year now that we've been reading Tazria and Matzorah, the portions after Shmini. Yeah, I guarantee you, when we read Tazria and Matzorah, which this year, again, Tazria and Matzorah are usually a double portion. They're read together as they are this year. We're reading that the week of the 14th of April. Yeah. Oh yeah. This is going to be on people's minds. I guarantee you, April 14th, we're still going to be thinking about quarantine and people being cut off from each other and things like that, which were in Tazria Matzorah. So that's chapters, as you saw, that's up to chapter 16. That's those chapters 13 or so through 16. Those are the portions of Tazria Matzorah, which we'll read as a double portion. So again, that's what we're looking at in Leviticus, folks. It's filled with things that we normally don't like to think about. 12 through 15, those 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah. 12, 13, 14, yeah, 4 portions. Those are portions that usually we read and we just talk about skin diseases and quarantining, and it doesn't really resonate. It does this year. So that's the week of the 14th. By the way, that day is also Yom HaZikaron, so we'll definitely also be remembering the soldiers of Israel that day, and have a special video that I'm going to share that we found in my dad's vault of video, and we're going to share something on that day for Yom HaZikaron on that Wednesday night in a couple weeks. But next Wednesday, folks, we're going to have class. We'll be in the mode of Passover, because we'll be in the middle of Chol HaMoed Passover. We'll be in the intermediate days, and I hope you can join us, and also join us for the Seders, because even if you're in Texas, you can join us for our Passover event on Sunday night. What is that? The 28th. I'm so confused.
All I know is tomorrow's the 25th, and it's D-Day for me,
It's D-Day.
or second shot day.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's come back. It's come up quick. Needle day. All right, everybody. It's good to see y'all. I'm going to get back to Passover stuff. I want everybody to, again, stay positive and stay hopeful. It's good to see everybody. Joyce, as you said, it's always something we look forward to all week. And
Yes.
man, I will tell you, we got some really good messages for our Passover Seder, the one I've been working on for JLTV, and some good music. And you'll see some of the stuff from last year, but some good stuff for this year that's new. Bunch of new greetings. I'm getting a greeting from our friend. I'm getting a greeting from our friend. Well, I'm not even going to tell you. I'm getting a greeting tomorrow that I just got an email, a text about. You'll like it. So we'll see that next week. So, all right, everybody. It's good to see you all.
Good to see you all.
Good to see you. Thank you, Rabbi.
Everybody, happy Passover.
Thank you.
Happy Passover.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.